Hello everyone, I'm David Libdan, author, speaker, coach, and founder of Applied Resources and Knowledge. I work with leadership, management teams, and individuals to help them facilitate lasting and desirable change by applying knowledge in order to unlock and realize more of their potential. Years ago, when I was a teacher, I had a student stop me in the middle of a presentation. Now, that's not uncommon. However, how she went about to get my attention was, she stood up, I still remember to this day, she stood up in the middle of the class and she began to wave her arms frantically out of frustration to get my attention. Well, obviously, she did get my attention, and I could read the frustration on her face, and I suspect that other students were also frustrated, but she was only the brave one to ask the question. And I still kind of remember the day. I may have even been waxing eloquent and in the teaching zone. But anyway, she stopped me, and her question simply was this: Mr. Libdan, this is all great knowledge and information, but exactly how are we going to apply this knowledge? What does this mean to us today? Wow, what a great and honest question, which I felt then really deserved an honest and candid answer. As you can imagine, there was an awkward silence that followed that little interaction. I had 30 pairs of eyes and 30 pairs of ears listening to see what this fountain of knowledge would expound. Well, I could have given her the typical canned answer, which I am certain I had given many times when I was asked a similar question such as that. But in that question, or rather the answer, would have sounded something like this, that canned answer. It would have sounded like, well, one day when you are a doctor, or you are a nurse, or you are an attorney, or certified public accountant, or biochemical engineer, you're going to recall 12, 15 years back that this knowledge that I shared with you was indeed something that you could apply to your profession or your set of circumstances. Well, that would have been a bunch of hogwash or horsepucky, as you can imagine. I mean, exactly what do students in 4th grade or middle school know about what they're going to become 12, 15 years from that point? In fact, you and I know of individuals, and maybe we're those individuals, where we've changed careers almost as often as we've changed cars. And in today's economic climate, who knows what that number looks like, but I've got to believe that it's pretty high. Well, back to this student. I hesitated, and this is what came out of my mouth. I don't know how you're going to apply this knowledge, or even if you can. Awkward. Even more awkward, right? And so eventually, what seemed to be an extra long class, eventually that class session ended. However, that question hasn't stopped reverberating in my mind even to this day. And now, within the context of coaching, whenever I'm in front of individuals or organizations, I'm still asking that question and other questions relative to that. Exactly how are individuals or organizations going to apply this knowledge, this information, given the inertia of old habits or old attitudes and even an existing corporate culture which may not serve them well, given the hopes and the aspirations in the future that these folks may be looking forward to? How many conversations have you been involved in, or maybe have heard of, that kind of went like this? I know that we need to work off of a plan, and we need to develop a routine, and I know that we need to work off of a budget. I know that we need to hire more people so we can actually get some stuff done around here. I know that we need to live more healthfully. I need to lose weight. I need to stop smoking. I need to spend more time with my family. I know I need to replace Bob from accounting because he's simply not a fit in that department. I know that we need to manage our time more wisely. I know all those things. They sound like great ideas, but we're not doing those things. Why is that? Is it fair to say at this point that you and I know a lot of things, but applying that knowledge and that information has been a bit of a slippery slope? I mean, we've been to the seminars, we've listened to the CDs, we've read the books, we've listened to motivational speakers, we've hired a consultant and spent good money, and maybe even out of frustration, like that student, we've sworn on a stack of Bibles and we've kind of done this, and we said, we need to do all this. We know all this. But still, your set of circumstances, or yourself, or myself and my set of circumstances, remains status quo. Or heaven forbid, they've gotten worse from last month or last year or longer. Why is that? In working with individuals and organizations that really did want to apply knowledge in order to facilitate lasting and desirable change, I found that there were certain things that ran common among all of them. One of them, for example, was that individuals and organizations were all too often too involved in what they were doing day to day, month after month, that literally the opportunities to implement change were crowded out. The other thing that I've observed also is that technical tools alone, such as coming up with or devising a well thought out strategic plan, which those individuals may have been actively involved in creating, didn't necessarily guarantee the effective and practical implementation of that strategic plan. It's been said that if you want different results, you've got to change the way you do things. You may have also heard the saying, simple but not easy. And it's true. Change isn't necessarily easy. However, there are ways that can and do make things easier for change to take place. Although I had a decent run of client success stories, I've also had my share. In fact, I've had a belly full of not so successful client stories. Those situations where clients remain status quo and unfortunately even gotten worse. I wrestled with this personally, and I couldn't with a clear conscience continue with a business as usual mentality. After all, these individuals and organizations had hired me to help them improve and grow, but any of the changes that occurred were short-lived, didn't stick, and died on the vine. This was disappointing, this was discouraging, and in some cases even embarrassing to all concerned. As you know, most of us are very adept at identifying what's wrong with a set of circumstances, what's wrong with an individual, what the problem is. But I've also discovered that identifying the problem and even understanding it doesn't necessarily produce the solution. For example, it's like the guy who wakes up in the morning, he looks in the mirror, and he sees that his hair is disheveled, he needs to shave, he needs to brush his teeth, he even admits, Houston, we've got a problem, but instead he just walks away. So, rather than focus on what's wrong, I decided to focus on what worked and what continued to work well. I embarked on a journey of researching, observing, and in some cases even interviewing those that had accomplished best practices in the area of facilitating and creating desired and lasting change. I'm here to share with you some of those best practices, and I'm also here to share with you some of my own personal results as a result of actually putting some of those practices to use. Here are some characteristics that world-class experts in the area of change and practical application have observed in successful individuals and organizations that have indeed achieved change. For one, those individuals and organizations were crystal clear about where they were going, how they were going to get there, and by when. Those individuals engaged and embraced a process. They weren't looking for the silver bullet or the magic pill. Those organizations intentionalized leadership at every level, including self-leadership, as opposed to expecting leadership from a very few or from a key individual. In those successful individuals or organizations, honest conversations could be held. None of this kill the messenger kind of an environment or pick your battles around here. None of that existed in those organizations. Also, successful individuals and organizations engaged in what's known as lifelong learning. In other words, their learning didn't end when their quote-unquote formal education ended. I'd also like to share with you some things to avoid as you look to apply knowledge in order to pursue change. Things like not having a high enough sense of urgency, or appealing to reasoning while bypassing the heart, losing momentum, and the tendency to listen to those gremlin voices. So what would it mean to you personally, to those you care about deeply, to that which you value most, if you could just apply one piece of knowledge, implement that one resource in order to change some aspect of your personal life or organization long term? That one thing or those things that have been gnawing at you for months or maybe even years. Applying that one piece of knowledge and implementing that one resource that will help you balance out your personal and professional life. Applying that one piece of knowledge or the implementation of that one resource that will help you realize more of your potential personally and organizationally. So here's the first thing you'll want to do. You'll want to subscribe to our video blog. And then finally, remember that change is possible when you apply knowledge.